For the Honor review, let's check out Banshin today, who's bringing a gaming performance test of the Honor Power. Last year's Power 1 was still considered a mid to low end smartphone, but this year's Power 2 directly uses a processor like the Dimensity 850 Elite, and it also comes equipped with a top X performance platform. It's rumored that this phone also features a very powerful and robust cooling system.
For now, we'll have to keep it confidential. Then, let's examine some of its gameplay performance.
First of all, regarding Peace Elite, it's quite a pity. It only supports up to 90 frames per second. Following that, let's take a look at Honor of Kings, and here, I once again managed to pull 4 or 5 individuals from the fan group to team up and play with me. The truth is, the first generation Power CS3 processor handles Honor of Kings much more stably, maintaining a solid 120 frames per second, and currently you can observe it consistently hovering between 118 and 120 frames. In other words, if you play Honor of Kings, this phone can totally handle it with ease. What's even more amazing is its long battery life, large battery. Personally, I estimate playing for 7 or 8 hours should be no problem at all.
You can see this Super Blue Teamfight's frame rate consistently stays at 120 FPS. Of course, it's a bit blurry here.
All in all, this game was handled with absolute ease, and the frame rate, I'd say, is incredibly stable. If your gaming requirements only extend to something like Honor of Kings, then the Power 2 is truly a match made in heaven, a divine machine. I personally believe playing for 7 or 8 hours continuously should be no problem at all. However, the phone won't be the issue. You'll need to watch yourself. Finally, let's take a moment to examine its thermal performance. We can observe the temperature ranging from 35 to 36 degrees, with a maximum of 37. This new cooling system certainly has its tricks. It's quite impressive, almost a little scary. Next, we'll enable a performance mode. You guessed it, I'm using a 2000 UN endurance phone to challenge Genshin Impact. What's probably most interesting is its game assistant. Here I'll enable a performance mode. I didn't expect it could boost both image quality and frame rate at once. This is even better than some major series phones. Now let's turn on touch enhancement and take a look. I then set the game's graphics quality to the highest and the frame rate to 60 frames per second. Now let's go ahead and start playing to see how it performs. Upon opening the game assistant, we can observe that in the city the frame rate isn't actually very high, only hovering around 40. To be honest, it's not exceptionally smooth, but it's definitely playable. Compared to something like 8 frames per second versus 120, there's still going to be a very noticeable difference. Now, let me show you some of the combat footage. Personally, I feel the visuals are quite acceptable. While it doesn't exactly flow like water, there aren't any obvious stutters or lags, and that to me is pretty incredible. It's surprising a long-lasting phone around 2000 yuan can play Genshin Impact to this level. Honor is truly pushing the limits with its specs these days, everyone, and the overall experience really feels fantastic. Of course, a slight concern immediately crossed my mind. With so many high-end components packed in, I wasn't sure if it could still maintain the $999 price point of the previous generation. It has a brand new cooling system, which is hard to fully assess right now, but after a full gaming session, I genuinely felt the game didn't lead to a significant temperature rise in the phone. Here, as is my usual practice, I spend nearly half an hour playing around with it. Then let's take a look at the current situation. The overall frame rate is hovering between 50 and 60 frames per second, which I'd say is quite stable. It's quite surprising that even Honor's mid to low end smartphones are now prioritizing and stacking up on performance. It's honestly a bit outrageous. Then let's check the heating. Surprisingly, it's only a little over 38 degrees and the highest was just 39. Doesn't this make all other phones look bad? So, that concludes our gaming test for the Honor Power, and honestly, its performance turned out to be significantly more powerful than I had originally imagined. I truly never would have thought that Honor could transform what was essentially an offline, long-endurance phone into this entirely new market segment. To conclude, if you play Honor of Kings, this phone handles it with ease. But what I want to say is, I'm not suggesting you use it for gaming, I'm just saying its powerful performance will ensure it runs smoothly in the future, and that's the greatest value of performance for a mid-range phone. Alright, today's video ends here, bye bye.